A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is The Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And good afternoon and welcome to the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Hope you're off to a great holiday weekend. Great to have the 4th of July on a Monday. Isn't that awesome? Everybody gets a long weekend. Almost everybody anyway. And I hope you get a chance to celebrate. Hope you get a chance to celebrate your Second Amendment rights. Hope you get out to the range this weekend. Or if you have property where you can do some shooting, it's great to go out and celebrate those constitutional rights that came out of that original July 4th. And I guess on that note, thing that I would say is let's make sure, as with all our holidays, as with Memorial Day or Veterans Day or any of our holidays, let's take a minute and contemplate what the holiday really stands for, what it really means, what are we celebrating? And in fact, I always like discussing the historical context of different holidays. And obviously with July 4th, that should be an easy one. But you know what? Right now, if you're with someone, you're driving in a car, you're sitting next to a radio somewhere. If you have a child with you, teenager, younger, whatever it is, turn around to them and say, "Hey, do you know why we celebrate Independence Day on July 4th? What's the significance of the date?" It's not like Thanksgiving. It's not like we celebrate the fourth Thursday of every November. I mean, this is a very specific date, July 4th. Why do we celebrate that particular date? And you know what? I worry with the curriculum in schools these days that these kind of things, to the extent that they're patriotic, that that they reflect the history that we ought to be contemplating on as those who love this country. I worry that we don't put enough emphasis on these kinds of things. This should be an easy one, right? This should be an easy A on the civics exam in terms of the correct answer to this question. But why do we celebrate 4th of July? What happened on the 4th of July? Turn around to your kid right now and say, "Hey, what happened on the 4th of July?" And we all ought to get that right. What happened on the 4th of July? Obviously the signing of the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. And a lot of times when we think back on that event and what a fabulous document it is. I mean, the wording of the Declaration of Independence, a lot of times, we ought to go back. We ought to take another look at that, because what happened that led those 13 colonies to declare their independence from Great Britain? It was because the form of government to which they'd been subjected no longer served at the consent of the governed. And that's discussed specifically in the Declaration of Independence, that government derives its power from the consent of the governed. And what a powerful concept that was in 1776, because you know what? They didn't vote in their leaders. They were born British subjects. And here in America, we get the government we deserve. Fortunately or unfortunately, we get the government that we vote in. And here were people, those many years ago, 1776, who said, you know what, we were born into this system of government. We were born as British subjects for the most part, all the people signing the Declaration of Independence. But we cast off those chains. This form of government no longer serves our purposes as free men. So we cast it off. It doesn't meet its purpose anymore. It no longer governs with the consent of the governed. And that second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence is pretty fabulous. A lot of us focus on words like we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We talk a lot about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, the Second Amendment is critical to securing those rights, to protecting those rights. But the document, is so much broader than that. And it talks specifically about whenever any form of government becomes destructive to the ends, that is the preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government. You know, and those words are so powerful, and it took so much courage. There was a documented article that was out. It was floating around the internet here over the last couple of days about the sacrifices of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. What happened to them in the ensuing years? And, you know, people don't realize the Revolutionary War wasn't a short war. You know, it started on April 19th. They shot her around the world at Lexington Bridge, Battle of Concord and Lexington. But the war went all the way to 1783 before the final treaty was signed in Paris. That's a long war. And the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, many of them lost everything. They lost their fortunes. They lost their estates. Even Benjamin Franklin, who left for France to negotiate with France to come into the war and to help the American side, he donated his entire estate and his entire fortune to the war effort. So at any rate, forgive the little bit of soapbox here, but as we head into this weekend, you know, that's the kind of thing that I think we should all pause and discuss and reflect upon and discuss around the barbecue grill. You know, I want to get out and do some fun things over the rest of the weekend, and I want to celebrate, and I want to enjoy having Monday off, but also want to reflect on, you know, how we got to where we are. Why is it that I can be the gun guy, that I can be a Second Amendment attorney, that I can be a firearms instructor, and I can have the rights and the liberties that the Second Amendment protects for me? It's because not only the brilliance, but the courage and the perseverance and the fight waged by those people who signed that document on July 4, 1776. And that's powerful stuff. And something that we don't ever want to lose track of. And even as I've said before on the Gun Guy Show, and we did a whole show really on sort of the origin of the Second Amendment, where it came from. You know, what were the experiences of the founders that led to the words that we see in the Second Amendment, and why it was clearly their intent, as the Supreme Court narrowly, but the Supreme Court affirmed that it is the protection of an individual right. It does not confer, but protects an individual right. It pre-existed the Second Amendment. But why was that? What were the experience of the founders that led to that? Well, it goes all the way back to that shot heard around the world on April 19th, 1775. Why was that first shot fired as British troops marched on Lexington and Concord? The Americans, the colonists, okay, the rebels, the revolutionaries, are resisting gun control. That's what the British were coming to accomplish. They were there to seize arms and powder and lead from places where spies had determined they were located in Lexington and Concord. And the famed midnight ride of Paul Revere, and it wasn't just Paul Revere, there were several who were warning of the British coming. Well, they were all British, but the loyalist troops, the redcoats, were coming. Why were they coming? They were there to seize guns. And that's what touched off. It certainly wasn't the only thing the Revolutionary War was fought over, obviously. There was taxation without representation. And then it was casting off the change of a government that no longer worked for the people. It no longer served with the consent of the people. But part of our origin as Americans, part of the founding of this country, the origin of this country, started with a refusal to lay down our arms upon the order of a government that no longer represented our interests. And I think with everything else going on right now, with gun control, when we've got congressmen sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives pouting because they haven't gotten as far as they want to get in terms of taking our constitutional rights away from us. As we head into this 4th of July weekend, I think it's a good time just to remember how we got to where we are, what those founders went through, what they endured to make them put those words on parchment that ended up as our Second Amendment that does confer our individual right to bear arms, and how that all coalesces into the rights we have as Americans that we celebrate on the 4th of July weekend. So some thoughts I wanted to open the show with. We'll get into perhaps slightly less serious discussions after the break. We're at the quarter hour. But hey, as always, anything you want to talk about, whether it's 4th of July, whether it's the founding of this country or anything else gun-related, you give us a call at 239-9393. That's 239-9393. Contact me on Twitter at Guy Relford or on the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is just Gun Guy WIBC. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Show about gun rights, gun safety, and responsible gun ownership. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back to The Gun Guy Show. A little government mule, love that. Thanks to producer Ethan for cranking out the tunes. Next on The Gun Guy Show, want to talk to you about a picture that I posted. I posted it on Twitter at Guy Relford. And also on the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is Gun Guy WIBC. So if you're, if you've got your phone in your hand, you're on the computer, check this out. What this is it's a real Glock pistol, and it's been customized. It's been painted to look like a Nintendo Zapper. Now, I missed the whole video game thing. I'm sure I'm showing my age. I think I played Pong a couple of times in college to truly show my age. So I'm not a video game guy and never have been. But, I understand the concept here. Is there is a sort of an accessory for your Nintendo, was it PlayStation or game console, that's a gun that you use to play shooting games on your Nintendo. Okay, got it. What someone has done is they've taken a real Glock pistol and they've painted it with a color scheme, sort of light gray and darker gray with red accents, a red barrel, a red mag release, and red slide stop, looks like, and takedown pins. So essentially got red accents on a gray pistol. Now, if you just look at the gun aesthetically, and it's an attractive gun, but now they've added Nintendo, I guess it's Zapper, on the side to emulate the play gun. But it's a real gun. It's just been accessorized to look like a Nintendo gun. Okay. I posted this after a discussion that got fairly heated on one of the Facebook gun pages. I think it was Indiana Guns. But it was one that I saw this posted on. And the discussion, the comments on this picture, what had happened is somebody had just posted a picture like this. By the way, this is not the gun that someone had posted here locally that they had done. They had done the paint job, the Cerakoting, and just said, hey, guys, what do you think? I just finished this. And the comments were really fascinating to me. And it's something that I want to talk about on the show. And most of all, I want to invite your comments on this. I want to hear what you have to say about this. And I'll certainly give you my opinion. But we've got a real gun that's been painted to look like a toy, like a plaything, including even putting Nintendo, the Nintendo graphic, right there on the gun. Now, let's leave aside the trademark and copyright issues and how Nintendo might feel about having their name, and I'm sure their trademark name, on someone else's product. Certainly if this is going to be offered for sale, then I'm sure Nintendo would have something that they'd like to say about that. But let's leave the intellectual property issue aside. This is something that somebody's just done for fun to their gun. Now, I don't know whether, again, this is going to be offered for sale or this is going to be offered to other people or he's doing this commercially. I don't know. Well, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about taking a real gun and painting it to look like a toy? We had a whole show, I don't know about a whole show, but we had a protracted discussion here on the Gun Guy Show, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, about a new product that was announced, which was a gun. It was a 2-shot Derringer 380 that looked like a cell phone. And when folded up, it looked just like a smartphone. And when you unfolded it, lo and behold, it revealed a trigger, and it was a 2-shot pistol, a real gun. People were going to carry these around in their hip pocket. I forget what it was called. It's called Real Conceal or Deep Conceal. I forget the brand name. But we put pictures of it out there, and we had a lot of calls, a lot of discussion on how people felt about that. And we got a lot of calls from law enforcement. And I think law enforcement's perspective on these things, you know, folks that have to be pulling cars over or going into houses or whatever it might be, performing their jobs as law enforcement officers, you know, what kind of guns they're going to come across, what kind of risks they're going to be exposed to. I think that has to be part of the discussion. That's why I always want to hear from law enforcement how they feel on some of these issues, but just for the rest of us. And what I found interesting about the comments on this thread on Facebook was that they really fell into two camps. One said, "Hey, that looks cute. That looks cool. That'd be kind of neat to have. Be fun to take to the range. Nice job on the actual paint job." And then you had folks who really were adamant about how horrifically stupid this idea is to take a real gun and make it look like a toy. And my first comment, really in reacting to several of the comments, was that I think we got a little bit misdirected in approaching this issue in terms of believing that it was okay to leave something that looks like a toy, but that really is a gun sitting around accessible to other people. Let's leave aside the wisdom of taking a real gun and making it look like a toy. We'll get into that. We'll talk a lot about that. But the point I tried to make, and a lot of people got really upset really fast, and I just sort of went with it. One, because I decided I was going to talk about it on my show, and I just wanted to generate the discussion. But people got really upset, saying that I didn't seem to understand the danger or the liability issues. I laughed a little bit about that. I mean, I've been in the liability business as an attorney for over 33 years now. But that I somehow didn't understand the danger or the liability associated with painting a real gun to look like a toy. And my response was, hold on. And this was a hypothetical question, somewhat rhetorical, but hypothetical, that I wanted people to address, which is, if you follow a basic rule of gun safety, and a very basic rule of gun safety, and it's addressed if you teach the NRA classes or you've been to an NRA class, it's one of the 8 what we call the rules for using and storing a gun. And in fact, this is talked about in about slide 2 or 3 of any basic pistol course you ever go take. And that is, store guns so they are inaccessible to untrained or unauthorized persons. Inaccessible to untrained or unauthorized persons. So my question to all people who are so upset about the dangers associated with this gun, and again, we're going to go into whether we think this is a good idea or a bad idea. We'll get into that. But setting that aside for just a moment, if you follow a basic rule of gun safety, which is store guns so they are always inaccessible to unauthorized or untrained people, then who's going to get hurt with this gun? And nobody wanted to focus on that issue. And part of the reason I created so much ire and people got upset in this discussion is they didn't see I was trying to make a point of, let's don't leave our guns laying around where someone who could perhaps believe this is a toy instead of a real gun could pick it up and hurt themselves or hurt someone else with it. Again, we're setting aside whether this is still a bad idea for other reasons. But shouldn't we be focused primarily on how we store our guns? Whether or not we're keeping control of our guns in such a way that other people who are not trained or authorized to touch or handle our guns don't have access to them. That's where the focus has got to be. Still doesn't mean this is a good idea. Believe me, we'll get into that. But shouldn't the focus be on storing our guns responsibly? Now, again, if you look at, I posted the picture on Twitter and on Facebook earlier in the day. I just asked the question, hey, is this a good idea? And you go down and look at the comments, it's about 50-50. About 50% of the people are looking at this going, hey, yeah, that's good looking. I'd take that. It'd be a fun range gun. And then I'd take it home and put it in the safe. And it wouldn't come out of the safe again until I was ready to take control of it. And then you have about another 50% of people going, are you crazy? This is a horrific idea, and it's inviting an accident. And I think that's an absolutely fair point, and it's a fair discussion. But I want to hear what you think about this. Would you own this gun? Do you think it's okay that this gun is being produced? Do you think it's okay that this gun may be out there in production or otherwise available to be bought? If you're in law enforcement, particularly always, if you listen to the Gun Guy Show, you know I'm a big fan of our law enforcement community. So I always want to hear from law enforcement. And I know because I've already heard from some on Facebook how at least some of those guys and women feel about this. And I completely understand where they're coming from. And we'll get more into that. But we want to hear from you. 239-9393. Join the discussion. 239-9393. You can also call just from your cell phone with pound 9393. Pound 9393. Contact me on Facebook at Guy Relford. Excuse me, I always turn that around. It's Twitter at Guy Relford or Facebook on the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is just Gun Guy WIBC. So give us a call, join the discussion. I'll be right back after the break. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Now you've got a gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
All right, welcome back. I'm Guy Relford, and this is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC, and taking questions about a gun that I posted a picture of on both Twitter and Facebook earlier today, which is a real gun. It's a Glock that has been painted to look like a Nintendo Zapper. It's been painted to look like a toy. I want to get your perspective on this. There's been a lively debate on Facebook. In fact, some people got pretty emotional about it. I got accused, as I said earlier, of not understanding the liability issues associated with this, or not understanding basic rules of gun safety. At which point I tried to point out as humbly as possible that I wrote a book on gun safety, but that wasn't received very well on social media. So I think I just kind of came across as not only uneducated but arrogant in that discussion. So I kind of bailed out of that discussion. One of the reasons I don't get involved in a lot of social media debates. But it was about the debate, the discussion was about this gun that's been painted to look like a toy. And you can see it on my Twitter account, just at Guy Relford, or on the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is Gun Guy WIBC. But check it out and let us know what you think. But in the meantime, we're taking your calls about anything gun related. You want to talk about any legal issues, training issues, you name it. You call us here at the Gun Guy Show at 239-9393, and we'd be glad to take your calls. But with that, let's go right to the phone lines. We've got Peggy. Peggy, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure, Peggy. What you got?
I feel that if it's painted to look like a toy, if it isn't in a safe box where a child can't get to it, that would be dangerous. But I'm 100% for us being able to use our Second Amendment and have guns to protect yourself. Because here, I think it was in Newcastle this week, that there was a couple came home and there was an intruder in their garage. They both had guns. They had a gun point till the police came. I think that each and every one of us should be able to protect ourselves in that way.
Well, Peggy, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your call. Yeah, I mean, if this gun is left laying around where especially kids have access to it, well, first of all, is it more of a danger than a gun that looks like a real gun? Could that be inviting to a child to pick up and play with when perhaps that same child wouldn't pick up a gun that they think is real? Sure. Is that a danger? Absolutely. No question. Is that an incremental danger? Is that an increase in the risk associated with any gun? The fact that it looks like a toy? Absolutely. Do I think this is a good idea? No. In terms of would I want to be the manufacturer of this, or would I want to be the person who puts this paint job on a gun and sells it? No, I think that could be a really bad idea, because if, God forbid, that happened, or the point made to me on Facebook today by a law enforcement officer, and an absolutely valid point, is if this gun, say, is visible in a car during a traffic stop, and that officer hesitates because he thinks it's a real gun and gets shot with that gun. Question posed to me on Facebook today. It was in a private message, but it was an absolutely valid question. And I think he was asking hypothetically, to the manufacturer or the person who painted this gun to look like a toy. What would that person say to the family, to the wife and children of a police officer who died because he hesitated, thinking that was a toy, and got shot? Well, that's a completely valid point. And I don't argue with that point for a second. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think it's a good idea to produce this gun or to paint this gun to look this way. Having said that, who's ultimately responsible in that situation? In any situation where someone illegally uses a gun? The person who used the gun. And we as gun owners do way too much necessarily of defending how guns look as opposed to the responsibility of how we use them. And my point throughout the discussion, while I do not think the production of this gun is a good idea because it does to some degree increase the risk of someone getting hurt who would not otherwise get hurt by a gun, where should our focus be? Our focus should be on responsible storage and use of guns. And when we store and use guns responsibly, they are safe. That is the point. And that includes a gun who, as a novelty, is painted like this. Does that make it a good idea? No, it doesn't make it a good idea. I think it's a knuckleheaded idea. However, if I owned this gun, could I ensure that nothing unsafe happens with that gun? Absolutely. Abso-damn-lutely, I could, because I would treat it like I treat all my other guns, which is I would not allow them to be accessible. And I sure as hell wouldn't have it in my hand during a traffic stop. And that's the point. And in another exchange, it's actually part of the same conversation, but in another exchange, I said, answer me this. If we store the gun responsibly, if we handle the gun responsibly, how is it going to hurt anybody? And the response was, well, even though all of us go into gun ownership with the best of intentions, accidents happen. Well, you know what? Is there such a thing as an accident with a gun? Sure, hypothetically. But you know what? If you've been around guns any length of time, or if you've taken any classes or been an instructor, you'll know about a transition we went through in terminology on quote-unquote accidents several years ago. For years, we used to use the term accidental discharge. If your gun went off when you didn't intend for your gun to go off, for years, we called that an AD. An accidental discharge. And you hear about it. Oh, man, had an AD at the range today. Didn't think the gun was loaded. Went to break it down. Pointed it in a safe direction, but squeezed the trigger so I could break down my Glock after releasing the striker spring. And damn, if the thing didn't go off. I had an AD. Feel terrible about it. Nobody got hurt because I kept the gun pointed in a safe direction. But boy, I feel terrible. I had an AD. An accidental discharge. And several years ago, I couldn't even put my finger on exactly when it was. At least 10, probably 15. Those in the quote-unquote gun community, certainly among instructors, we came to a consensus that, you know what? The term AD isn't appropriate. It's not accurate. If your gun goes off when you didn't intend for it to go off, you were negligent. That person who said, oh, man, I didn't realize it was around in the chamber. Well, that's because you didn't check the chamber. Or you checked the chamber and then closed the slide with a magazine still in the gun and chambered around. Either way, you were negligent. If your gun goes off when you did not intend for your gun to go off, you were negligent. And for the most part, we don't even use the term AD anymore, accidental discharge. What do we use? Negligent. Negligent discharge. ND. You ask any instructor who has any experience at all, and they will agree with that 100%. There are no such thing as accidental discharge. There are only negligent discharges. Why don't we as gun owners adopt the same mentality when it comes to how we store our guns? Oh, well, I didn't lock my gun up and accidents happen. Or the response I got today, well, we go into gun ownership with the best of intentions, but accidents happen. No, they don't. We're either negligent or we're not negligent. And we as gun owners need to look exactly like so-called accidents that arise out of our irresponsible storage of handguns or rifles or shotguns or any other firearm, exactly like we change the mentality around accidental discharge, quote unquote. There are no accidents. There's only negligence. And we're responsible for that. And unless we take that responsibility as a first step, then we're subject to legitimate criticism over how we handle our guns. And to say, you know what, I ought to be able to irresponsibly handle or store my gun and have no one be hurt with that because it looks like a real gun is a losing argument. Having said all of that, do I think a gun that looks like a toy is a good idea? Hell no. I think it's a knuckleheaded idea. Because it does, to some degree, increase the risk of something bad happen, notwithstanding the fact that someone had to have already been negligent in allowing access to a gun for that bad thing to happen. That's my 2 cents. How do you feel about it? Let's continue the discussion. 239-9393, 239-9393, or just pound 9393 from your cell phone, on Twitter at Guy Relford, on the Gun Guy Facebook page, which is Gun Guy WIBC. Join the discussion. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
He's a Second Amendment attorney. He's an NRA certified firearms instructor. He's the Gun Guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford. This is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. And I'll tell you what, we got a ton of callers. I think some that want to talk about this so-called Nintendo Glock, but several that just want to talk about whatever else they want to talk about. So let's go right back to the phone lines. And we've got Oliver. Oliver, welcome to the Gun Guy Show. Are you there, Oliver?
Yes.
Okay, buddy, what do you got for us?
I broke a no contact order with my ex-wife. We were still married, and I asked for some stuff out of my truck, and she went and got me in trouble, and I paid a fine, went to court, done all my stuff. But they're saying now that they're getting ready to take everybody's that's got one that's broke a no contact order or something, that they're going to take their permits, gun permits away from them. And I was wondering if there's any way I could get that charge expurged off my record.
When did all this happen, Oliver? And are you still subject to what we call an order of protection? Is that something that you're still subject to right now?
No, sir. It's been 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for the call, Oliver. And let me tell you exactly how that works. And Oliver mentioned to the producer when he called in that he was concerned about the recent Supreme Court ruling, and this just came down last week. And what it was a couple of people who just had misdemeanor domestic battery convictions, and they were appealing the fact that under federal law they cannot possess a gun at all while they're once they have a misdemeanor domestic battery conviction on their record. And it says right in the federal statute, which I believe is 922G, it's 18 U.S.C. 922G, where it lists prohibited possessors. And it says if you've been convicted of domestic battery, including a state charge, which is a misdemeanor offense of domestic battery, you cannot possess a gun. And a couple of gentlemen appealed, and the Supreme Court of the United States ruled last week and said, no, that is constitutional. You get convicted of a domestic battery charge, even if it's a misdemeanor, then you have lost your ability to possess a gun as long as that conviction is on your record. Now, separately, Oliver just asked us about what he called a no contact order. In Indiana, the person who contends they've been a victim of domestic violence or domestic abuse can go and seek and obtain what we call an order of protection. Some people call them restraining orders. They have different terminology, but the term we use here in Indiana legally is an order of protection. And Indiana law says that an order of protection that protects a domestic partner, and the categories are broader than that, but essentially it's a domestic partner. And federal, what Indiana law says is an order of protection can include an order that you relinquish your guns if you're the person that the protective order is against. Okay. Federal law says if you're the subject of a protective order and that order of protection protects certain classes of people, domestic partner, former domestic partner, someone you lived with, someone you shared a child with, that automatically you can't possess a firearm, period, end of story. In terms of being the subject of an order of protection, which is different from having a conviction of domestic battery, and Indiana actually even has a broader category we call a crime of domestic violence. You can't own a gun. The good news about an order of protection, at least for that person's rights who've had that order against them, is that their rights to possess a gun is restored when the order of protection expires. So typically in Indiana, they last 2 years. But we're at the end of the first hour. We're going to take a break. We got a ton of people on hold, so please have patience. We're going to get to you when we come back from the break. But this is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford. This is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. And I'll tell you what, we've got a ton of people on the phone. And some, I think, want to talk about this real gun painted to look like a Nintendo Zapper. Others just have general questions about gun stuff. So let's go right to the phones. And we've got Don. Don, welcome to the Gun Guy Show. Yeah, are you there, Don? Don, I'm going to park you on hold if you don't appear in 2, 1. Sorry, Don. All right, Mike. Mike, welcome to the Gun Guy Show. What do you got?
How you doing? Yeah, I do agree with the accidental discharge being changed to what you call a negligent discharge, because that is negligence on the part of the owner.
Yep.
And as far as the gun being painted to look like a Nintendo Zapper,
yep,
those type of guns shouldn't be allowed. The reason why I say is because, when children play with guns, they're not thinking about whether or not this is real or not. It's a toy to them. But like you said, somebody else could see it, and they could think that it's real, and they could shoot them like what happened to Samir Rice in Cleveland.
Well, Mike, hold on. What about not letting your kid play with a gun?
Well, I understand that. Don't hold on now. I understand that completely. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It's just the fact that he got a hold of a toy gun.
Yeah.
I don't know where he got it from. I don't know who was responsible for letting him have it or put his hands on it, but he got it, and it was mistaken for a real.
Yeah,
so
fair enough, Mike. And you knew I was going to challenge you like that, but I don't disagree with you, my friend. And thank you for calling the Gun Guy Show. I don't disagree with Mike's point, and that's why I think this is a knuckleheaded idea. That's why if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I want to have a business of taking real guns and painting them to look like toy guns, and I'll make $1 gazillion," do you think, Guy, as a lawyer focusing on firearm related issues, that's a good idea or a bad idea? I tell him it's a really bad idea, because if, God forbid, something happens with that, again, as I was totally appropriately challenged on Facebook today, what are you going to say to the family of that officer who hesitates because they think it's a toy and they get killed by that gun? What do you say to them on whether that gun should have been out there, available to consumers? And because essentially that hesitation cost them their lives. Well, there's no valid defense to that very appropriate challenge of what do you say to that family, that hesitation because the gun looks like a toy, and no cop wants to be the cop who shoots someone who only has a toy gun in their hand. We have far too much of that going on now with guns that look like real guns. That happens way too often. So I get that, and that's why I say this is a knuckleheaded idea. But any discussion about this gun and how safe this gun is or isn't if that same discussion doesn't include the basic point of let's store our guns so kids can't find them and think they're toys and hurt themselves, then we're missing the point. At a minimum, we got our priorities screwed up. Doesn't make this gun a good idea. It's a horrible idea. It's a god-awful idea. But any discussion about what a god-awful idea it is has to include a discussion of let's don't let kids get a hold of it. Or let's, more broadly, follow a basic rule of gun safety, which is to store our guns so they're inaccessible to untrained or unauthorized persons. If we do that, 100% of the time, no exceptions, if we're not negligent in the storage of our firearms, I don't care what the damn gun looks like, toy or otherwise, nothing bad's going to happen. Someone has to have already screwed up for this gun to be in a place where it's going to cause an injury. Now, because that happens too often and people do screw up, the gun's a bad idea. But make no mistake, someone screwed up if a kid comes along, finds this gun, and decides it's a toy and hurts themselves. And let's, as gun owners, not just assume we're going to be negligent and leave a gun sitting around, and therein lies the danger. If that's your approach, your priorities are in the wrong order. And that's been my point all along. Doesn't make this gun a good idea. Still a god-awful idea. Let's go back to the phone lines. Randy, what do you got for us?
Hello?
Yep, Randy, what you got, buddy?
Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to call and say a lifetime NRA member, been taught gun safety since I was probably 3 or 4 years old around that time. Passed down from my father, his father, and, of course, to my son now. And really strong on gun safety. And I think I was taught at a young age, maybe around 4 years old, that I couldn't even point this cap gun that I knew wouldn't hurt a fly at someone, and
Yep.
I followed it.
Yep.
So why can't, unfortunately, I feel like we teach sex education too young in school, around 6th grade. Why can't we start with gun education at a young age in school?
Oh,
Safety.
buddy, Randy, you and I are in exactly the right place on that. And I got to tell you, I mean, it incenses the hell out of me. I have not done this for years, and I should start again. I should not give up. But for years, I offered to teach and go into schools and teach the Eddie Eagle program. And what's the Eddie Eagle program? It's an NRA program designed for preschoolers through 2nd graders. And if you listen to the Gun Guy Show, you've heard me talk about it before. It's a program for young kids that's totally designed around the concept of if they see a gun, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. That's the whole program. Now you got workbooks and puzzles and little mazes they fill out, and you do exercises, but the whole thing is to get these little kids to go stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. Okay. Now, again, someone has to have screwed up to put that kid in that position. You know, Johnny pulls a gun out of a backpack on the school bus and goes, ooh, look at the cool thing I found in Dad's sock drawer. Well, Dad screwed up by allowing the kid to have access to that gun. But assuming someone screws up, which people do, and I get it, people are negligent. That's why people get hurt accidentally with guns far too often. What do we want that kid's reaction to be? Stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. Okay, so I've called schools and I say, hey, let me come in. You park a bunch of kids in the gym or the auditorium, and let me put this on. I'll bring the materials, I'll pay for everything, free of charge. And you know the reaction you get in the schools? Oh, well, no, we think that's pro-gun. We don't want to do anything that's pro-gun. You know, we don't want to be pro-gun here at so-and-so school. I'm not pro-gun. I'm not trying to sell your 2nd graders guns. I'm not being pro-gun. I'm being pro-gun safety. I'm trying to save a life. Oh, well, no, we don't want to talk about those things here. And again, to the gentleman's point who just called, you know, we'll talk about sex education at whatever age. I don't even know what it is now. My kids are all older. And that's fine. But, we don't want to talk about guns. We're being pro. No, you're not being pro-gun. We're potentially saving a life. But schools don't want to talk about that. So Randy, I think it is, buddy, I couldn't agree with you more, man. Let's talk safety. And let's also talk about that Eddie Eagle scenario. Okay? Stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. That's what we're trying to do. What if that gun looks like a Nintendo Zapper? Now, again, to make my point I've been making throughout the show, someone screwed up to put that kid in that position, to see a gun, no matter what it looks like, within reach of that child. They've screwed up. Someone's been negligent. But even say that kid's been trained to stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. What does that apply to? That applies to guns. Doesn't apply to toys. And that's why I'll come back to saying this real gun painted to look like a toy is a knuckleheaded idea. All right, we're at the quarter hour. We're going to take a break. If you're on hold, stick with us. I'll tell you what, here at some point, we're going to continue to take your calls. But before we go too much farther, we're going to have a very special guest here in the studio. We've got Mike Daggett, who is in the Air Force Reserve, and we thank him for his long military service. But what he's also involved in right now is a fantastic group. You've heard me talk about it here on the Gun Guy Show before, but it's Folds of Honor Indiana. And this is a group, an organization that takes donations, raises money for scholarships for the family, particularly the children of soldiers who are wounded or killed during their military service. We're talking about putting kids through school as a response to the sacrifices that their parents have made for this country. So if this cause doesn't tug at your heartstrings, then no cause will. It's an honor to have Mike here. We're going to have him join the show here before too awfully long. But in the meantime, we're also going to be taking your calls. So don't go away. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Now you've got a gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back to the Gun Guy Show. This is Guy Relford on 93 WIBC, and we're talking guns tonight, and we've got a whole bunch of people who've been holding for quite a while, so we're going to go right to the phone lines. And Bob, you've been hanging in there, buddy, for quite a while, so thanks for your patience. What do you got for us tonight?
Well, that's okay. I don't have anything to do. Hey, I appreciate you listening. I don't have a life.
Sure. No worries. Well, sure you got a life. We're just glad you make the Gun Guy Show part of it on Saturday afternoon. So what do you got for us?
I appreciate it. Hey, I just want to bring up the safety and negligence issue. Mm-hmm. How many people at home right now have steak knives and meat cleavers laying on the counter or in a drawer that their kids
fair enough.
Can get a hold of? Yeah. And when somebody does get hurt with a knife or a meat cleaver, you don't hear about that in the news like you do with a gun, and the parents aren't prosecuted like they're, negligent with a gun. And then I'm lucky I'm still alive after growing up in the 60s with bow and arrows.
Yeah.
You know how dangerous a bow and arrow is? I'm lucky I'm still here. So I just want to bring that up.
Oh, there's a lot of things we did. I mean, I was born in 57, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s myself, and even then and later, I don't know. You look back on things we did in terms of riding bikes with no helmets and hell, riding mini bikes. I had a little chibi mini bike that would do about 40, 50 miles an hour, and I'm screaming around the neighborhood as a young kid, and very little in the way of personal protective equipment. But your point about guns being treated unfairly in the media, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that we have a term gun violence that the media loves, certainly the politicians love it. They use the term gun violence all the time. When's the last time you heard knife violence or club violence or car violence? Now, we want to blame, anytime there's a gun involved, we want to blame the gun. There's a great cartoon. I've talked about it before. There's a 4-box cartoon. You'll see it out there. And there's a guy standing over a dead body, and he's got a string of rope in his hand. And there's someone else standing there, and they're looking at, and they're going, "You strangled him? What's wrong with you?" And then the next one is he's standing over a dead body, and he's got his knife in his hand. And they say, "You stabbed him? What's wrong with you?" And it goes on like that. And then the last box, he's standing over him with a gun, standing over a dead body, and they're going, "We've got to do something about guns," where the focus is on the bad guy in all contexts, except when a gun's involved. So the basic point that, are guns treated unfairly? Sure. Now, do I have knives sitting around in drawers that my granddaughters, for instance, could access when they were over? Yeah. But do I lock my guns up? Absolutely. Do I treat guns and knives differently? Yeah. Can you accidentally hurt yourself with a knife? Absolutely. People, are taken to the emergency room all the time in dramatically high numbers for hurting themselves with knives. But obviously, in terms of lethality, in terms of likelihood of something really, really bad happening accidentally for someone untrained in the use of a gun, yeah, we got to treat guns a little differently, and I don't think we can back off of that. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. And John, you've also been holding in there for a long time, my friend. Thanks for waiting on us, and thanks for calling the Gun Guy Show.
Well, thank you for your service to the citizens of Indiana.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I have a friend who recently died, and the police ended up entering his house on a welfare check and seized several weapons of his, which I'm supposed to be getting back. But one of them was a suppressed 22 bolt-action rifle.
Uh-huh.
And I know he did have it in a trust, but I am the administrator of his estate. Do I have any rights or standing to get that suppressed rifle back?
Well, actually, the administrator of the estate doesn't have standing to do anything with that gun if there was a trust and there are co-trustees. In other words, one of the benefits of doing a gun trust or any form of trust, and again, I'm not a general wills and estates attorney, but we do a lot of NFA trusts. And if it's a suppressed gun, the suppressor clearly is an NFA regulated item. I'm sure that's why he created an NFA trust to hold that item. The co-trustees or the beneficiaries or successor trustees named in the trust have rights to that firearm according to the terms of the trust. The NFA item actually doesn't become part of the estate. It flows with the terms of the trust itself. So if you're a co-trustee, if a person is a co-trustee, or if there are no, say, currently alive co-trustees, but there are successor trustees, they're the ones who have the right to that NFA regulated item.
Okay. He has a 9-year-old daughter that's with an ex-wife in another state.
Okay, yeah.
And I doubt if he left, has her on it.
Yeah, well, that's right. And she couldn't possess it, obviously, yet. Anyway, she could possess it at 18. She probably, if she's named as a beneficiary or successor trustee in the state, that's not until she achieves probably 21 is how we usually do them, because you can't buy a gun from a dealer until you're 21. So a lot of times we set that up at that age. But yeah, the first thing to do, John, is to have him pull out the actual trust document itself. What are the terms of the trust and who's identified as having those rights? If the gun has to be, or the suppressor has to be held until they reach a legal age, then the trust should account for that. And it could possibly be that the administrator of the estate is to hold the item until they can pass it to that person, depending on what the actual trust says itself.
Yeah, how would I find out about the trust? He was 36 years old, and this was out of the blue, and so is there any place I can go? Or
that great question. Well, I'll tell you what, it's kind of a long discussion, because he would have sent a copy of his trust in with his Form 4 to transfer the suppressor to him at the time he acquired it. So
I need to find out where he got it from.
Yeah, he needed to find out where he got it from, and this would be really hard, but there's theoretically a possibility of getting a copy of it from the ATF, but that, I can tell you right now, would be a bureaucratic nightmare. But I'll tell you what, if you want to call me during the week at the law office, just go to relfordlaw.com, and we can chat a little bit more about that. If I can help you in any other way, I'd be glad to, but it's kind of a protracted discussion to have here on the radio.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, John. All right, buddy, hang in there. All right, let's go back to the phone lines, and we got Scott. Scott, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hi, Guy. Good to talk to you.
You too, buddy. Thanks for calling.
And also, I wanted to echo the last caller's statement by saying thanks for helping out, law-abiding gun owners in every way you can, just verbally and in your practice.
I appreciate that.
I just want to add on to your comments regarding handguns painted up to look like toys. There are a couple of related notes. First off, you had a great point about you don't want police having to hesitate. You can go thinking of their conscience and possibly costing their life, or having to get into a situation where they have to think, do we a shoot or no shoot?
Yeah, absolutely. And that wasn't my point, by the way. A gentleman named Sean made that point to me on Facebook today, and I just want to echo it because I think it's a completely valid point.
It is. And on top of that, I'd like to add that if you have a gun, you want that gun to look like a gun, in my opinion. And that means if you whip out what looks like a toy, you don't want and you're trying to defend your life, and you have an attacker who thinks that's a toy, he may not hesitate to shoot you. Instead of you being able to hold him at gunpoint and have a chance of not shoot, you may be in a situation where he shoots you, or you're forced to shoot when you might have been able to hold him if you'd had something a little bit more business-like.
Yeah. Scott, I had not thought of that point, and I think that's brilliant. I'm really glad you called with that point, because, all right, so I got bad guy who's broken into my house, and he's in my kitchen, on his way to steal whatever he's going to steal. I come around the corner with my Glock 19 that's painted to look like a Nintendo Zapper. And I go, hold it right there on the ground, with much profanity. Which he's going to say, he goes, dude, you pointing a Nintendo toy at me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, it's a real gun.
And by extension, you see these guys, you've seen the guys who get a skull and crossbones and, engraved on their slide and the Punisher's skull on the back and zombie grips, and I'm going,
yeah.
I'm not saying that should justify a prosecution, but I would think that there might be in some locales, maybe not here, but in some locales, a prosecutor would say, this was a justified shoot, but if there's any question at all, they could use that against you.
I had a case. To your point, Scott, and thanks for your call. I had a case where a gentleman, he didn't shoot anybody, but he did pull a gun. And we contended it was valid and that he was not guilty of pointing a firearm. But he had 1911 grips. He'd bought at a gun show that had a skull and crossbone with "Born to Kill" on the grips. And that was not helpful. He didn't go to jail, but I would have preferred that he not have "Born to Kill" on the grips of his gun when I was defending his case. Obviously won't mention any names on the radio, but it reinforces your point. All right, let's take one more call before we take a break. And when we come back, by the way, we will have Mike Daggett from Folds of Honor. But let's go to Kat. Kat, welcome to the Gun Guy Show. Or is that Cal, by the way? You're on the radio. Yep, I can hear you. Go ahead. Nope. I'm going to put you back on hold. Alrighty. All right. I'll tell you what. We're at the bottom of the hour. I'm having trouble seeing it. I think it's maybe Kai, K-A-I. I'll tell you what. Since I wasn't pronouncing the name, let's go one more time. Kai, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hello?
There you are. How you doing? Hey. You're on the air. I think I was mispronouncing your name. I apologize. Is it Kai?
Ty, T-Y.
Oh, T-Y. Okay, all right, okay. A little breakdown of communication on our end. But I think you have a question about shotguns. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I just wondered, I have a shotgun. I know I listened last week, you can do gunsmithing yourself. I heard you say that. Could I cut down the barrel on that shotgun to the over 18-inch so it's over the legal length, or would that make it illegal if I cut it down personally?
No, you mean, so let's say you got a 24-inch barrel on your shotgun and you want to cut it down to 18 and a half inches. Is that the question? Or do you want to cut it down less than 18 inches?
No. I was going to do 18 and a half because I know they said 18 is the legal.
Yeah, you can do that if you want to. Now, a lot of people that are professional gunsmiths or people that are into shotgun, in detail would tell you that it's not necessarily a good idea to do it yourself in terms of the quality of the firearm and the accuracy of the firearm. And there are things with crowning barrels and things that, and I am by no means a gunsmith. There are people that say it may not be a good idea for you to do that, but there's absolutely nothing illegal about it. You can do your own gunsmithing, including cutting down a barrel on a shotgun, as long as you don't take it below the legal limit without a tax stamp that you get from the ATF under the National Firearms Act. As long as it's over 18 and a half inches, or over 18 actually, then you're legal, and you can do that yourself. So thanks for calling the Gun Guy Show. Okay, we're a little past the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a break. Continue giving us a call with any questions or comments you have, 239-9393, or contact me on Twitter at Guy Relford, or on Facebook at Gun Guy WIBC. When we come back, we're going to have a very special guest, Mike Daggett from Folds of Honor, talk about their annual golf tournament and fundraiser to create and give out scholarships to the families of our military heroes. So we want to talk to Mike, and we want to talk a lot about how we're going to try to raise a lot of money for Folds of Honor. So stick around. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Your rights, your responsibilities, your guns. This is the Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford, and this is the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Having a great conversation. To some degree, we're talking about this Nintendo gun. And by the way, I had a comment on Twitter that I wanted to mention. And this is from Nate, and Nate says, I have no problem with a Nintendo gun. Law enforcement shouldn't either because law-abiding citizens don't point anything at cops. Well, Nate, your comment is exactly right as far as it goes, but bad guys do. And I think the concern, again, this was voiced to me on Facebook today, and I think it's a completely valid point, and I agree with it 100%, is I agree with you, Nate. Law-abiding citizens don't point anything at cops. But what if a bad guy has one of these guns? He intentionally is carrying it because it looks like a toy, and he thinks that gives him some advantage. And lo and behold, he's at a traffic stop, or he's in a stop and frisk situation on the street. He produces this gun, and a cop hesitates because he thinks it's a toy, and the cop gets shot when he would have otherwise not hesitated if the gun hadn't looked like a toy. So I agree with your comment. Law-abiding citizens don't point anything at cops, but bad guys do. And I do think this gun being out there poses some risk to law enforcement, and would never say otherwise. All right, I'll tell you what. We're going to, as I've been promising here for a while, we're going to bring into the show, I believe, Senior Master Sergeant Mike Daggett, who, and I said Air Force Reserve earlier, and there you go, a typical civilian who has never had the honor of being in the military. I screwed that up, and it's not the Air Force Reserve, it's the Air National Guard. But Mike is here representing Folds of Honor, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. But first of all, Mike, welcome to the Gun Guy Show, buddy.
Man, guys, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on this beautiful 4th of July weekend.
Absolutely.
Happy Independence Day to you.
Thank you so much. Well, let's talk a little bit about Folds of Honor. Tell our listeners a little bit, just what is Folds of Honor? What's really your mission as an organization?
Thanks, Guy. The Folds of Honor Foundation is our mission is to honor the sacrifice and educate their legacy. And we know nationwide there's a lot of great patriots in America that have never served a day of life in uniform, but they're phenomenal patriots. And a lot of times they want to find a way to give back. And a lot of military families aren't going to ask for the help. So we've kind of stepped in and kind of filled the need where the government falls a little short to take care of the educational needs of the young kids. And, there's a lot of great state programs. A lot of states like Indiana specifically has stepped up and said, hey, we're going to take care of those as well. But what we started realizing is if a 4-year-old doesn't have the means to even get to college, we've stepped in early on and we take care of their needs to get them to college, get them educated if they need private assistance as well. And then, of course, pick them up and take them into college. And it's really a noble mission, and we do a phenomenal job here nationwide and, of course, here in Indiana to raise the funds to make sure we take care of them.
Okay, and we're talking about a category of kids here. Now, these are the kids of military members who have suffered an injury or died while in the service of their country. Is that right? Is that the population of kids we're talking about?
That's exactly correct. Yep. Their father, their mother, they served their nation and they just didn't come home, or if they did come home, they didn't come home the same person. And so, in a lot of cases, you have a little young boy who's never going to play catch with his dad again, who's never going to be tucked in at night, and so we step in and say, how can we help? And there's nothing we can do to replace that void.
Of course.
It's just never going to go away. But if we educate them and we get them the financial needs they need to get to college, then they become a productive member of society. And one of our taglines, and it's so true, and I got to experience this recently, is that we provide healing, hope, and the opportunity for dreams to be realized.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a fabulous way of putting it. Now, I went to your annual banquet, Folds of Honor. I was absolutely honored to receive the invitation to go. But you've got a couple different events coming up that are fundraising events for your organization. Tell our folks about that, and if they want to become involved, how do they get involved?
Absolutely. So we do primarily we were founded by a PGA professional and an F-16 pilot, a kind of unique combination,
wow.
Right? So he's really tied to the golf community, and so that's where we kind of grew out of that, support from the golfers. So we've continued in that tradition, and we hold a couple golf events here in Indiana. So we do as part of Mercedes-Benz, Worldwide Motors on the north side. They're phenomenal sponsors of ours, and so what they've offered is what's called the Mercedes-Benz Dealer Championship. So all the proceeds go to benefit the Folds of Honor. You come in to Prairie View Golf Course up on July 18th is the day we're having it. The website would be patriotshootout.org.
Okay.
They go there to register, and it's a full day of golf. We have a flyover scheduled for noon. We have a live radio broadcast from a golf show coming in, and the winners they go play Pinehurst, and they go play Pinehurst, all expenses paid. And last year, the guys who won, they won Pinehurst. Then they go as a guest to Mercedes-Benz down to Augusta, down to the Masters.
Wow!
And they're actually going to Germany. But so PatriotShootout.org is our primary golf event, and then we do another one over at Maple Creek. The Indiana Wine Festival here downtown. We're going to be a beneficiary of that. And then we do our annual gala where we award the scholarships and collect all of the proceeds. We do that right here on the Circle in the Columbia Club. All that's going to be on the Folds of Honor website. Click on chapters and we'll get that updated real quick.
Okay, and again, the first Patriot Shootout Golf Tournament, give us the date again?
Monday, July 18th.
Okay, so that's coming up.
Yes, sir.
And there's still opportunities, though, if somebody wants to come out and golf. What's the cost involved if somebody wants to get involved?
It's $125 per person. And so what's going to give you food and beverage. Budweiser, Zinc Distributors here, phenomenal supporters as well. So they've said if you want Budweiser's available.
Okay. Well, I'd probably go through about $125 of Bud Light during an event like that anyway.
It's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer. So
a buddy of mine used to say, you go broke staying home at those prices.
That's exactly it, yeah. So we have a great time. We look at the cost, and you're getting your money's worth, and plus it's going to a great cause. And, we do a real good job. We have a financial audit every year to make sure that our ratios stay in tune. And we make sure that our pledge is to 90% of everything we bring in turns around and goes right back to the families that is needed.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think anytime we're talking about any charitable organization, but particularly with some of the bad press we've seen of groups like the Wounded Warrior Project, I think people are rightfully concerned that when they do come in and donate to any organization, that their money's going to go where the organization says it's going to go, which is to help in this case, the children of our wounded or deceased soldiers. What would you tell folks who ask the question of how good of a job and how efficient is Folds of Honor about distributing what comes in to the recipients that they identify?
So that's a great question, and we, as stewards of the money that's entrusted upon us, is we want to make sure that when you give me $1, we want to make sure that you want that dollar to go exactly where you thought it went, and so our goal has always been 90%. At some years our audit comes back we're 93, 94%, which is phenomenal. I think last year we were to take under 90 at like 89, and then our goal is to get back to 90. So we make sure that it all goes there, and Indiana specifically, our board is all volunteer. So there's not a single dime of that money in the Indiana chapter that's going to go to any sort of salary. We send that all back up to the national organization. They funnel it out, and they're held accountable to that. And so we just know, and listen, we're all, we're people as well. And so when I give money to a charity, I want to make sure the exact same thing. And so I don't have the ability to reach out what other organizations do. So I entrust them to do it properly.
You bet.
And so if you're going to give money, regardless of what charity it is you do owe it to yourself to make sure that money's going there. And so we know that, we're conscious of that, and our pledge is to know every dollar you give us is going exactly where we said it to. 90% of it's going right into scholarship funds directly.
That's fantastic. Now, one thing, and maybe we'll close with this, but I'm not a golfer, right? I'm probably the only lawyer in North America who doesn't play golf. But I always say I shoot guns and ride Harleys. I don't have time for golf. So someone like me who's not a golfer but identifies Folds of Honor as an organization I want to get involved with or I want to contribute to, how can we do that?
That's a great segue. So we were born in the golf community, and what we're finding is there are people who golf, but that's not their passion either, right? So we rely on golf is the kind of the mechanism we're using to tell the story, but then as we find the people who are really passionate and really connected to what we do, we find out what their primary interest is, and they say, you know what, hey, I'm a gun guy. Maybe at my range this weekend, or maybe at the range we do a fundraising event, and that person says, well, I found out about it from the golf event, but what I really want to do is this, and I'm a fisherman, I'm a bowler, whatever you are, is you have some sort of leverage inside your community, that a community that we currently don't have access to. So it's as simple as going to our website, contacting me and say, hey, this is what I want to do, here's what I want to do, how do I do it, and we'll piece it together.
Okay, and obviously if somebody just wants to write a check, they can do that as well.
Absolutely. Right? Check and sponsorships. We're on the Folds of Honor website. If you click on chapters, you'll see Indiana right now is a link to my email address. We're in the process with our ad agency to develop that page, so we'll have national, or local sponsorship opportunities. But yeah, just write a check to Folds of Honor, send it to our address. It's on the website, and we'll make sure you'll get your receipt back and put it in the right spot.
Well, I'll tell you, it's fabulous, and I can speak from just a little bit of experience because, as I mentioned earlier, I was honored enough to get an invitation to go to the gala, and what you have at this. I mean, it's a cool event anyway. I mean, there's a silent auction and there are other neat things going on available to purchase some neat memorabilia. But what you walk away with in terms of the impact of this event are the stories from the families, the mothers of the children who are receiving these scholarships, and the impact, the positive impact that what Folds of Honor does for these people and the impact it has on their lives. I sat there and there was a pretty steady stream of tears throughout the evening, and they were happy tears.
Absolutely.
Obviously there was devastation in the sense that you had a lot of folks who didn't come home, or as you said, didn't come home the same way. But when you see the positive impact that what Folds of Honor does on a daily basis and does with the money that they raise in the events that you're describing today, Mike, you walk out of there just saying, wow, if any money I've spent or anything I've done to benefit this organization is definitely going to the right place.
Absolutely. There's a lot of great organizations out there that help veterans and take them into, to nice events for the day. But when you educate them, you take care of them for the rest of their life. Yeah,
awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much. Mike Daggett, Senior Master Sergeant, Air National Guard.
That's right.
I'll get that right. And everybody check it out. It's patriotshootout.org, and that'll get you right where you need to be. We're well past our quarter-hour break. My producer's giving me mean looks, so we need to get into the break. We'll be right back. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
He's a Second Amendment attorney. He's an NRA certified firearms instructor. He's the Gun Guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back to the Gun Guy Show. This is Guy Relford on 93 WIBC. And thanks again to Mike Daggett, Senior Master Sergeant in the Air National Guard, talking about Folds of Honor. Great organization. I went to their gala, as I mentioned earlier, and it is just a tremendous event. And you walk out of there knowing, because you've heard directly from the beneficiaries and from their families, of the impact that those donations and other contributions have on their lives. And these are people that are the families of folks that have made the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of their country. I mean, how do you not look at that as a great place to make your contribution? If you're going to make a charitable donation, there couldn't possibly be a better place to do it than Folds of Honor. So thanks again to Mike for coming in. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about next week, assuming something else dramatic doesn't happen in the meantime. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in California. Now, again, California, and whether you want to spell it with a K or call it California or whatever else you want to do, we got to keep an eye on what's going on in California, because all it does, when they're way out in front on gun control efforts out there, all it does is it gives legislators in Congress new ideas. And these aren't necessarily new ideas, but every time California enacts something like they've just done, we got to keep an eye on it. We can't say, well, that's California, it doesn't apply to us. It doesn't directly, but it sure can. And what have they done? Governor Brown just yesterday signed 6 new gun control measures into law in California. One of them makes illegal any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. And it's not like they can't buy them or sell them or distribute them. If you possess them now, you're a felon. Is that crazy? I'll tell you, we're at the end of our show. Come back and join us next week. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.